Before the era of car ferries, travel to Mercer Island depended on small passenger boats that ferried both residents and Seattleites seeking a weekend escape. Early visitors often stayed at the Calkins Hotel, which became a well-known destination after hosting President Benjamin Harrison during his 1891 visit to Seattle. The hotel's founder, C.C. Calkins, envisioned a large residential community with a church and a college on his land holdings. However, the Panic of 1893, compounded by a series of family deaths, forced him to sell the hotel and surrounding land, leaving his dream unrealized. Around 1900, the island's first automobile dock was constructed at Roanoke Landing on the northwest tip of the island, signaling a new era of transportation. Nearby, the Roanoke Inn was built in 1914, serving as a hotel, restaurant, and central gathering place for the community. Today, the Roanoke Inn remains the oldest continually operating business on Mercer Island. The construction of a two-lane wooden bridge across the East Channel in 1923 spurred another era of development on Mercer Island. Paired with frequent ferries from Roanoke Landing, it provided a crucial link for residents of the East Side commuting to Seattle. Within 2 decades, however, this link was overwhelmed. By 1939, total lake ferry traffic had swelled to more than 900,000 foot passengers and 200,000 cars annually. The explosion of wartime industries in Seattle intensified the search for a better transit solution as more and more commuters made the journey across Lake Washington. Furthermore, the original East Channel Bridge had fallen into severe disrepair. It became so unreliable that school bus drivers would make children exit the bus and walk across, reboarding only when it was safe on the other side. The truss designed to let boats pass underneath had even rusted shut, making it clear that a replacement was necessary. With more commuters traversing the lake each year, support grew for the construction of a floating bridge to Mercer Island, an idea initially conceived by Seattle civil engineer Homer Moore Hadley in 1920. Drawing on his experience designing reinforced concrete barges for the military during World War I, Hadley theorized that a floating bridge with reinforced concrete pontoons would allow for more cost-effective construction and would bypass the difficult process of building on the soft lake bed. Bellevue advocates of the bridge promised a quick trip that would link a Seattle job with a country home. After securing the initial funding of $4 million in Public Works Administration money and a bond issue of $5.5 million to be repaid by bridge tolls, construction began on the Lake Washington floating bridge, the first bridge to directly connect the east side to Seattle. When the Lake Washington floating bridge was completed in 1940, it was the first floating bridge and the largest thing afloat in the world. Along with an updated East Channel Bridge, the Lake Washington floating bridge allowed commuters to travel from Bellevue across Mercer Island and into Seattle, all on the U.S. Highway 10. The bridge had 25 pontoons made of concrete and weighed approximately 100,000 tons. The middle featured a floating drawspan, which was designed to retract for passing ships. To accommodate the retracted section, the roadway bulged out in a sharp double curve that drivers had to navigate at high speeds. This bulge became notorious for causing accidents. Even before the route officially opened, a driver drove into the opening in the middle of the bridge. Head-on collisions were also common, with about 70 to 80 accidents occurring per year. Despite safety concerns, the construction of the bridge was a resounding success. For a 25-cent toll, drivers could save 14 miles while traveling from Seattle to Spokane. The effects of the Lake Washington Bridge on Mercer Island and East Side life were huge. The bridge opened up a whole new area east of the lake to development and made daily commuting to Seattle feasible. From 1940 to 1950, Mercer Island school enrollment jumped 234.5%, while the previous decade had only seen a 6.9% increase. Population and property values also leapt more than 300% between 1940 and 1950. A growing commercial district began to replace Bellevue's strawberry and vegetable fields. Mercer Island had its last deer hunting season in 1942. The East Side had officially joined thousands of other U.S. communities that were experiencing rapid suburbanization in the late 1940s and early 50s. By the 1960s, state and city officials proposed adding another bridge alongside the Lake Washington floating bridge, as the original span was rapidly becoming choked with traffic. This second bridge would extend I-90 farther west across the state into Seattle. Proponents of the bridge touted that it would save 25% in travel time from the east side to Seattle. In 1976, agreements were made about the path and design of the future I-90 bridge that would run across Mercer Island under a memorandum agreement. The affected communities agreed on the specifics of the bridge, including that HOV lanes must be convertible into rail rapid transit. Planners of the project championed a design approach that prioritized the welfare of adjacent property owners and pedestrians and utilized a greater degree of cooperative planning. And as a result, local communities were encouraged to participate in design of the section of freeway that would pass through their region. On Mercer Island, residents led by Mayor Aubrey Davis fought for the freeway to be buried and covered. Davis, known famously for his quote, "We don't want to see it, we don't want to hear it, we don't want to smell it," pushed for the Mercer Island section of the I-90 freeway to be partially covered with the park, creating a less obtrusive roadway. Community members also pushed for the expansion of light rail and public transit, and future assurances that the bridge would be high-capacity transit capable. When it was completed in 1993, the new Homer M. Hadley Memorial Bridge, which carried westbound I-90, was a marvel of modern engineering and urban planning. It featured HOV lanes and two lids, one in Seattle and one on Mercer Island. At the time of construction, the lid, which housed ventilation equipment and featured a park on top, was the largest building on Mercer Island. Urban planners and city officials came from around the world to see the innovative construction methods used in the I-90 expansion project. The project was described by the Washington State Department of Transportation as a triumph of highway planning, a design that accommodates not only cars and trucks, but people. When the eventual addition of light rail technology to the floating bridge began in mid-2017, the reversible HOV lanes were permanently closed. The city of Mercer Island sued over HOV lane access restrictions, ultimately securing a $10 million settlement from Sound Transit meant to address potential traffic impacts. The city has also faced multiple lawsuits over its obstructionist tactics to prevent low-income housing development and upzoning along the transit corridor. Local advocacy groups like Moms for Safe Mercer Island have openly opposed the light rail project, citing fears about an influx of homelessness, concerns that critics argue reflect the racist and classic attitudes underlying much of the island's resistance to regional connectivity and affordable housing requirements that typically accompany transit development. After the project being delayed multiple times due to construction issues, in May of 2025, Sound Transit finally started testing of the Mercer Island light rail segment. This testing included towing a light rail train across the bridge, marking the first time light rail made it across a floating bridge anywhere in the world. With an expected opening date in early 2026, the completion of the East Link light rail project is just around the corner. This project promises to radically improve transportation across the Seattle area, signaling another step in transit progress going all the way back to the construction of the first bridge to Mercer Island. This public transit-based future envisioned by early designers of the I-90 project can only be ushered in if Mercer Islanders work with transit organizations to build a better solution for the entire region, instead of digging in their heels at the first sight of change. Mercer Island's transformation from an isolated retreat accessible only by ferry to a crucial link in the regional transit network reveals a persistent tension between connectivity and exclusivity. Each leap in transportation infrastructure, from the first automobile dock at Roanoke Landing to the floating bridges to the impending light rail, has been met with both the promise of progress and fierce resistance from those seeking to preserve the island's character. As the East Link light rail prepares to begin service, Mercer Island stands at yet another crossroads. Islanders can embrace their role in improving regional transit as they did during earlier infrastructure projects, accepting the cultural shifts that follow, or continue to fight to preserve the status quo at the cost of stifling future possibilities. Whether Mercer Island will embrace its role as a transit hub that connects communities, or continue to fight against the very infrastructure that has enabled its prosperity, will ultimately determine if this next chapter of transportation history brings the island closer to or further from the interconnected future that community members over a century ago envisioned.